After dressing as a vicious female partner, who was imprisoned in a mental hospital, I hooked up with an abstinence doctor. I pressed him and kissed him, and said sweet words over and over again. Brother, Sharon MacArthur loves you so much. But he was unmoved, until I found a jar of heart, with my name written on it, in his secret room. Fled in shock, but was bound by him. Baby, say you love me. I shook my head helplessly, and my gagged mouth couldn't make a sound. His fingers brushed my body, sickly and gently. Don't you love it? But you're here saying you love me. I hugged Henry Jeremy's leg, and cried so hard that it rained. Brother, don't want me, I'll be obedient. Henry Jeremy looked at me indifferently and condescendingly for a long time. When the nurse was ready to move me away, he half crouched down. The bony hand lifted my chin, and his eyes were full of interest. He stretched out his hand to the nurse standing behind me. Bring the medicine. Met with my glazed gaze, he fed the medicine to my mouth. He smiled softly. Didn't Sharon MacArthur say he would be good? Then take the medicine. My hand holding his leg loosened a little, and I tried to step back, but he grabbed it with one hand. What does Sharon MacArthur run? Could it be that what you just said is all about lying to my brother? At the moment, I felt like I was stupid. I thought that if I pretended to be pitiful enough, he would have a little pity. But the pills that were close at hand told me that Henry Jeremy was not a soft-hearted master. 3 months ago, I wore this book, and became a vicious female partner. The original body has the same name as me, also called Sharon MacArthur, and was adopted by the parents of the male protagonist Alger MacArthur since childhood. The two grew up together, and the original inevitably fell in love with the titular older brother. So after the heroine Alberta Bell appeared, Sharon MacArthur made things difficult for her in every way, and finally ended up being driven crazy by the male protagonist in a mental hospital. And what makes people desperate is that, when I walked through, the plot of the book had already come to an end. I, an innocent man, have to bear the consequences of what she sowed. Even if I pretend to have amnesia and act normal, I will still be forced to take drugs that will drive people crazy every day. So I set my sights on Henry Jeremy, the director of the mental hospital. I deliberately appeared to be deranged. Every day, lying by the window, waiting for Henry Jeremy to pass by, he called him brother lovingly and pitifully. Except for the first day, Henry Jeremy paused to look at me, and then ignored me for 3 days. And just now, when the nurse forced me to take medicine again, I deliberately pretended to let them let their guard down, and then escaped from the room. It just happened to crash into Henry Jeremy's arms. So there was the scene where he forced me to take medicine just now. Looking at the pills he had hand-fed to my lips, I knew that Henry Jeremy was more unapproachable than I had imagined. But in this cage-like mental hospital, I had to be close to him to have a chance of being free. After figuring it out, I obediently lowered my head, and took the pill from his fingertips, and the tip of my tongue licked his fingertips unintentionally. After swallowing the pill directly, I squeezed out a well-behaved smile at him, with a bitter face. Sharon MacArthur is obedient, brother, don't leave Sharon MacArthur. I reached out and wrapped my arms around his neck, and rubbed my head against him. Henry Jeremy rubbed his fingertips, and a low laugh came out of his throat. Laughter sent chills down my spine. If it weren't for the fact that he wasn't described too much in the novel, I almost thought I was in trouble with the villain. Suddenly, the back of the neck was clamped by him, with one hand and pulled away an inch. The sharp gaze looked straight into my eyes, as if it was about to pierce my soul. He said meaningfully, amnesia. My heart jumped, and I tilted my head at him, and said, huh? What is my brother talking about? The reason why he pretends to be cute, is because in the original book, the only appearance he had when he was a child was to compete with the male protagonist for a rabbit. Although he does not have much ink, it is enough to see that he is extremely fond of cute and harmless creatures. Henry Jeremy caressed my eyes, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes, and after a while, he muttered, interesting. Then I was picked up by him and walked out. Looking at the sky overhead, I felt ecstatic in my heart, as if I saw freedom beckoning to me. But instead of taking me out of the asylum, Henry Jeremy took me to a separate building in the asylum. It looks like Henry Jeremy's residence here. When I was put in the bathroom, and the buttons of the hospital gown were unbuttoned one by one, I was stupid. Henry Jeremy, a well-dressed beast, didn't even spare the sick. I still couldn't hold back, and reflexively covered my chest with my hands. Henry Jeremy raised an eyebrow. Didn't Sharon MacArthur always like his brother? Is there anything my brother can't see? I burst into foul mouth, but I pretended to be shy and hugged him. My brother can see it, and Sharon MacArthur wants to see my brother too. As I spoke, I went to unbutton his tightly buttoned shirt, and touched his solid pectoral muscles by the way. Was secretly cool, but his hand was firmly clamped and thrown away, and he sneered, "It's boring." Then he turned and left. Obviously my performance was not what he wanted to see. Although I regret that I don't have any pectoral muscles to touch, I am also secretly glad that I made the right bet. Looked at his back, and deliberately whispered, "Isn't my brother watching?" Sharon MacArthur's body is white and flimpy, but it looks good. I was answered by the sound of the door slamming shut. I was the only one who leaned against the door and laughed. I took a shower in the bathroom by the way. The bathrobe went out and was trying to ask Henry Jeremy to get my clothes ready. I saw a middle-aged woman in the living room at some point. There was also a birthday cake on the table. She said to Henry Jeremy with a kind face, "Chapman Jeremy, today is your birthday, and your mother bought you your favorite birthday cake, you can eat it." Henry Jeremy was not happy at all, as cold as an iceberg. She reached out to pull Henry Jeremy's face. "Chapman Jeremy, why aren't you smiling? You're smiling." Such a scene is so weird that I feel furious when I see it. I took a few steps back, ready to leave, but the movement under her feet attracted the attention of the middle-aged woman, and when she looked up, her face changed instantly. When he got up, he slapped Henry Jeremy, who was sitting next to him. Sharp nails grabbed his neck, and he yelled in a frenzy and out of control, "Henry Jeremy, have you forgotten what day it is? Your dad and your brother died because of you. It's all because of you. You don't know that forgiveness actually plays with women. Why don't you die like a cold-blooded monster?" Compared to her angry madness, Henry Jeremy was a calm madness, allowing his mother to choke his cheeks to the point of bloodshot without struggling. I couldn't help but feel angry in my heart, and I took a few steps to push his mother away. "Do you want to kill him?" His mother looked at me and then at Henry Jeremy, and suddenly laughed. "You're going to regret protecting this mad dog sooner or later." She laughed as she crushed the cake on the table with her hands, and the strawberries on the cake were crumpled into juice, making the already muddy cake even more strange like blood. I frowned as she left. Looking back at the wound on Henry Jeremy's neck, he was coldly pushed away. "Get out." His eyes without sorrow and joy made people's hearts chill. I took a few steps back unconsciously. Afraid of annoying him, I finally quietly went upstairs. In the middle of the night, I still didn't fall asleep, partly because I was thinking about Henry Jeremy and his mother. The second reason is that I'm really hungry. For 3 days, I hadn't eaten anything normal. Either they were fed medicine by someone arranged by Alger MacArthur, or they only had cold water to nibble on steamed buns. Now I can eat a cow in front of me. When my stomach rang for the first time, I finally couldn't help but prepare to go downstairs to find something to eat. But as I walked barefoot through the dark living room, I found Henry Jeremy still sitting on the couch, lonely and dangerous, like a beast lurking in the dark. It sends chills down my spine. I can't go to the kitchen, but I don't want to go back so easily. My brain was spinning, and I walked mechanically towards him without stopping. He sat down on his lap, and leaned back to kiss him on the lips. Henry Jeremy froze as he pushed my hand away. By the time I came back to my senses, I was leaning into his arms, my hands around his waist, and I was snoring shallowly. For a long time, in the darkness, fingers slid from the center of my eyebrows to the tip of my nose, and finally stayed on my lips. My heart was racing, lest my breath betray me. His lips opened slightly, he took his fingers in his mouth and bit them lightly, then spit them out, and then let out a whisper, "Brother." Henry Jeremy woke up suddenly, his grip on my arm tightened, trying to tear me away. I tightened my arms around him, rubbed my head in his arms, and buried my whole face in his chest. The movement of his hands suddenly stopped. Didn't wake me up, didn't push me away until I really fell asleep. The next day, I woke up from the couch in pain. I was a little dizzy and had stomach cramps. When I found Henry Jeremy, he was sitting in a restaurant drinking coffee. The loneliness and indifference of last night were no longer seen on his face, but a gentle and elegant appearance. I hugged myself against the door and smiled at him weakly. "Brother, can you give me a change of clothes?" He put down his glass and glanced at me. "Upstairs in the room, look for it, yourself." "Thank you, brother." I left with a smile. After washing up and changing clothes, I went to the dining room, and the food on the table had already been removed. I wanted to cry without tears, and pleaded with Henry Jeremy, "Brother, I'm so hungry, do I have anything to eat?" Henry Jeremy snapped his fingers at the kitchen ant, "Get her something to eat." I was almost moved to cry, and I hugged his hand and coquettishly, "Brother is so good." "Really?" He looked at me with a smirk. I nodded heavily, "Of course, Sharon MacArthur thinks his brother is the best." Until the ant brought a plate of lemons and put it on the table, there was no movement. I was stunned. Let go of his arms, sit up straight, and ask him, "This is my breakfast?" "Yes. Who told Sharon MacArthur to wake up late? Only lemons can be eaten." I'm sure he did it on purpose, and he concluded that I was faking amnesia and trying to torment me, and force me to show my true colors. Last night's company didn't open his guards. The stomach hurt and my head hurt too. I squeezed out a miserable white smile and apologized to him. "Brother, I'm sorry, Sharon MacArthur will have to get up early to have breakfast with you in the future. As long as my brother is here, even if I eat sour lemon, Sharon MacArthur will be happy." As the words fell, I picked up a lemon clove, and stuffed it into my mouth. Tears were instantly stimulated. "It's really sour, it's so sour, and my stomach is getting more and more uncomfortable." I laughed at him and ate the lemon with tears in my eyes. Henry Jeremy's coffee cup had already been put down, and he hadn't picked it up again, his brow locked. As I was about to take the third lemon, he suddenly stood up. "It's time to go to the hospital." I licked my lips and silently put the lemon down. I seemed to know how to break his guards. On the way, I endured my physical discomfort and took Henry Jeremy's hand, which was walking in front. "Brother, slow down, I'm about to lose track." He glanced at me and withdrew his hand from mine. The disgust is palpable, but the pace slowed down. I rejoiced in my heart, secretly proud that everything I had done seemed useful. So cheekily grabbed his sleeve again, and this time he didn't refuse. It wasn't long before I arrived at Henry Jeremy's office. My attending doctor, Antony Mika, showed up, saying it was the attending doctor, but it was actually Alger MacArthur's man, and his main task was to torture me, and drive me crazy. And this person also has a crush on the heroine, but after knowing that the heroine likes Alger MacArthur, he has been silently guarding and suppressing his feelings to protect her. And I, the cannon fodder female partner who has hurt the heroine, naturally became a thorn in his side. Sending me to a psychiatric hospital was his suggestion. Seeing me holding Henry Jeremy's sleeve, his face changed a little. "Henry Jeremy, it's time for Sharon MacArthur to take your pills." After saying that, he made a look at the nurse behind him to catch me. I ducked behind Henry Jeremy, but he backed away. "If you get people in, you can take care of it yourself, and then let people run around. Don't blame me for being ruthless." Henry Jeremy's lesson is that it's all our people who are negligent. Antony Mika was careful to make amends. I shouted at Henry Jeremy, and tearfully shook my head at him. "Brother, I'll be obedient. Don't want me." But Henry Jeremy turned around and walked away without looking back. Antony Mika sneered and grabbed my hair and mocked. "I really underestimated you, and I still wanted to seduce Henry Jeremy, but unfortunately you miscalculated. After that, you will give me medicine." I struggled at Henry Jeremy's back and cried, "Brother, don't go, don't go." Antony Mika grabbed my chin, and tried to break my mouth open, and I bit him the hand. He retracted his hand in pain, and the medicine bottle in his hand rolled to the ground. I picked up the vial and ran towards Henry Jeremy, but before I could grab his sleeve, I fell to my knees with a terrible stomach ache. I opened the bottle, poured out a handful of pills and stuffed them into my mouth. "Brother, look back at me. I've taken the medicine. I've taken it all. I'm very good. Can you not leave me?" My throat was sore from choking on the pills, and I coughed violently, and I couldn't stop feeling nauseous. As the world swirled and fell, Henry Jeremy stopped. He turned to look at me. "Even if it's hell around me, are you going to come closer?" Yes, I chose not only Henry Jeremy, but also the hope of life. Rather than fall into the hands of Antony Mika, and be driven to death, it is better to gamble. I woke up again in a hospital room. My hand was still firmly gripping Henry Jeremy like a straw. Henry Jeremy saw me wake up and twitched his hand, only to be grabbed tighter by me. The pleasure in his eyes told me that he didn't hate it. "I'm not leaving. He instructed the nurse to bring me light porridge, and gently took me in his arms, and fed me spoonfuls of spoons. The attitude was so good that I almost thought I was dreaming. Looking at him, his eyes were stunned, and he could only swallow mechanically. I'm that good looking. His low laugh brought me back to my senses. I secretly pinched myself, making sure it wasn't a dream. He was so excited that his limbs were wrapped directly around him, and he complained in his ear, "Why doesn't my brother want me?" Henry Jeremy put down the porridge bowl in his hand and stroked my back. "Shall I tell Sharon MacArthur a story?" I nodded my head in anticipation of his story. I used to have a rabbit. It was beautiful, it was very well behaved, and it was so clingy to me that I thought it would never leave me. But one day, I found it gone, and when I found it again, it was close and dependent on others. Do you know what happened to it? Henry Jeremy looked at me, with a deep gaze. I shook my head, feeling that the answer was not what I wanted to hear. He was close to my ear, and his cold voice reached my heart. Then I dug out its heart. I shuddered, causing Henry Jeremy to chuckle. Sharon MacArthur scared. He put his forehead against mine, put one hand on the side of my face, touched my ear and said softly, "Sharon MacArthur, don't learn it. You know." I stepped back a little and kissed him on the lips. "Sharon MacArthur won't leave my brother." With a smile in his eyes, he reached out and touched my lips. "It's not a good habit to be casual with relatives." "No casual. I'm just kissing my brother." He put his arms around me, his chest shaking with laughter. He bit his earlobe. "The baby is so good." Choosing to be close to Henry Jeremy was undoubtedly the right choice. After being taken by him as a possession, he was visibly nice to me. In addition to improving the quality of life, he also held me in the palm of his hand and pampered me. We are almost inseparable. From the beginning, when I was sticking to him, he was sticking to me. After discovering that he has insomnia at night and always likes to sit on the sofa in the living room, I sleepwalked and hugged him for a few more nights. A few days later, I found that he had started to go back to his room, and I didn't sleepwalk anymore. But Henry Jeremy quit. He actually appeared in my bedroom in the middle of the night, kissed me awake, and said with a pitiful face, "Baby, I can't sleep alone. The people who were dismissive of me at the beginning are now spoiling me, and I almost suspect that I am dreaming." It wasn't until he squeezed into bed, held me tightly in his arms, and listened to the sound of his powerful heartbeat, that I was sure it was true. Gradually, it became a habit for us to sleep together every night. Henry Jeremy was very regular at first, just sleeping with me in his arms, as if he really used me as a sleeping artifact. But then, every day I woke up, I could see that my mouth was swollen. The neck is also full of strawberry prints. Henry Jeremy almost didn't tell me with a bullhorn that he was kissing me while I was asleep, so when he kissed me again, I kissed me back. He was excited to take control of the initiative, but I yelled, "If my brother dares to move, he will not be allowed to sleep with me in the future." One sentence directly made him honest. I retaliated by planting strawberry marks all over his face and neck in an attempt to disgrace him. But he was much thicker than I thought. He didn't hide it. He took me by the hand and let the people in the hospital look at me. "I'm afraid others don't know. This is my masterpiece." And Anthony Mika, who has always regarded me as a thorn in his side, looks at me and wants to kill me. I quietly rolled his eyes and gestured his middle finger again, so angry that he kicked the wall in anger. After his attempt to take me away was rejected by Henry Jeremy, he didn't give up and actually broke into Henry Jeremy's office. "Henry Jeremy, Sharon MacArthur hasn't taken medicine in a long time. It's not good to be sick then." Henry Jeremy didn't raise his head, and said coldly, "Get out." "Isn't Henry Jeremy afraid of offending us?" Alger MacArthur. Anthony Mika tried to take Alger MacArthur to oppress him. Henry Jeremy fed me the peeled oranges and said nonchalantly, "What about offending him? You think I'm going to be afraid of him?" "Of course not," I replied silently in my heart. Henry Jeremy was the one who dared to steal things from Alger MacArthur as a child. Then don't blame Alger MacArthur for telling Alger MacArthur what Henry Jeremy did. Anthony Mika glared at us, and was about to leave, was stopped by several black-clad bodyguards at the door. He turned, his face full of anger. "What does that mean, Henry Jeremy?" Henry Jeremy wiped my mouth with his trademark smile on his face. "Do you think that I can come here if you want to come, and leave when you want?" Anthony Mika was only then afraid to apologize. But Henry Jeremy wasn't in the mood to listen. With a hand at the bodyguard, Anthony Mika was dragged down, and soon screams rang out outside the door. The sound was so horrible that I cowered into Henry Jeremy's arms. He lifted my chin. Baby, do you think I'm scary? Brother is not scary. I quickly denied it. Baby, don't you wonder who he says Alger MacArthur is? Henry Jeremy's topic became abrupt, and he looked at me with an inquiring gaze. I chuckled and asked, who is he? He's a very bad guy, as long as the baby remembers to stay away from him. I didn't expect to meet Alger MacArthur so soon. Just in time Henry Jeremy wasn't in the asylum. I was going to sneak out for a walk, but I happened to run into Alger MacArthur, who came to the mental hospital. At first, I didn't recognize him, but it was inexplicably familiar. Seeing that he was wearing a suit, I guessed that he came in from outside, so I asked him for directions. Do you know which direction the gate is? He looked at me inquiringly for a moment before he said, I'll take you. I had just followed him out of the asylum's doors, when a car sped towards Alger MacArthur. I instinctively pushed him away without even thinking about it. Sharp brakes sounded, and the car came to a halt in front of me. When I came back to my senses, I was so frightened that I sat down on the ground, and my whole body couldn't stop shaking. I was pulled into a familiar embrace, and I looked up to meet Henry Jeremy's deep gaze. I trembled and grabbed at his clothes. Brother, he didn't answer me, obviously angry. Before I could coax him, Alger MacArthur spoke first. I didn't expect what Anthony Mika said to be true. Henry Jeremy, who has never been close to women, was actually deceived by me? A femme fatale. He looked at me again. Sharon MacArthur, I'm really underestimating you. That's when I realized that it was Alger MacArthur. It's no wonder that when I encounter danger, I instinctively go to save him, thinking that I will be affected by my original feelings. It's a pity that Alger MacArthur doesn't appreciate it at all. I didn't bother to pay attention to him, so I turned around and hugged Henry Jeremy. Brother, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time, and I'm ready to look for you. Sharon MacArthur, stop pretending. Just now, he deliberately met me by chance and saved me with his life, and now he is talking sweetly to Henry Jeremy. Do you think he will still believe it? Henry Jeremy's hand around my waist tightened, as strong as it was about to melt me into my bones. My scalp tingled, and I looked up and kissed him on the lips. He turned to Alger MacArthur and yelled, who are you? Do you know that you are very noisy? I saved you just because I was kind. Even if I replaced it with a dog, I would save it, and I didn't put gold on my face. Alger MacArthur sneered. He took out a wedding invitation from his bosom, and handed it to me. I hope you can still hold it. The bright red bronzing word came into view, and there was a momentary throbbing pain in my heart. I bit the tip of my tongue, and naturally took it. It turned out that I wanted money, and I would have gotten it if I said no. Not seeing me get out of control, Alger MacArthur seemed a little disappointed. He looked at Henry Jeremy, who had been silent all along, with a cold face. Do you really believe that she has amnesia? I also looked at Henry Jeremy a little nervously. Henry Jeremy reached out and rubbed my hair and laughed. To Alger MacArthur, word for word, he said, my darling, why don't I believe it? Thump. My heart stopped beating half a beat and then accelerated again. Withdrawing my gaze, I lowered my head and hugged him a few tighter. Feelings of weakness and unknown spread in the heart. I don't even know when Alger MacArthur left. Henry Jeremy took me back, and gently accompanied me to dinner. There is no mention of me running around today without listening to him. Didn't ask me why I pushed Alger MacArthur away at the risk of my own safety? For the first time in the night, Henry Jeremy didn't sleep with me. His perversity made me panic. I couldn't help it. I got up to look for him, but I couldn't see him everywhere, and I don't even have a mobile phone, so I can't contact him at all. I had to sit on the couch and wait for him, until the wee hours of the morning, when I was woken up by a kiss that smelled of alcohol. I saw Henry Jeremy, who was full of alcohol. His eyes were red, and he hugged me and kissed me eagerly. The collar of the loose pajamas was messy, and he bit me down on the shoulder. I pushed him away in pain. Brother, you bit me. I'm sorry, baby. He buried his head in my neck, and before and then hot tears fell. It was like a flame falling on my heart. You've always loved him. And my brother called him too. I'm a thief. Right. Relying on your amnesia and enjoying the stolen love. But, I really love you. He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of emotion. Baby, would you like someone else? Like me? Okay. It was the first time I had seen him so humble, and it was the first time I had known him to show his love so bluntly. A sense of guilt rose in my heart. In this relationship, he is giving sincerely, but I am just using him. Henry Jeremy. As soon as I called out his name, I was pressed by his hand on the back of my head. My teeth were pried open by him, and the extreme deep kiss made my heart tingle. I nudged him before I was about to suffocate. The next second, he pressed me down on the couch, my earlobes biting repeatedly, and his hand reaching into the hem of my baggy clothes. A deep and sexy voice sounded. It was the baby who provoked me first, and I will never let go. The body was invaded inch by his hand, igniting the fire of desire, wanted to refuse and pander, and finally fell into his voice. I love you. From downstairs to upstairs, from bed to bathroom, Henry Jeremy invaded me so much that I couldn't even cry at the end. When I woke up again, I didn't know when. When I raised my hand and rubbed my eyes, I found that my arms were sore. Looking at the kiss marks on his fingers, he couldn't help but scold. Beast, I'm sorry. A hoarse voice rang out from behind him. My body stiffened. A sense of shame welled up in my heart, and I remembered the scene last night, and I buried myself whole under the covers. Does the baby hate me very much? I didn't understand what he meant. He pulled the quilt a little away, and he sighed again. I'll bear the consequences. I blinked, waiting for him to follow. I saw him pick up his mobile phone and make a call. I turned myself in. Well, I was drunk last night. Forced a man I love dearly. Address. My brain finally reacted, and the consequence of what he said was to call the police and arrest himself. Henry Jeremy. Shut up. I did it all of my own volition. I threw myself in shame and was about to hang up his phone, but Henry Jeremy pressed his shoulder excitedly. Baby, you say it again. I turned my face awkwardly and said impatiently, I did it of my own volition. What does it mean to be voluntary? Baby, look me in the eye and tell me. Henry Jeremy stubbornly held my face in anticipation of my answer. To be willing means I like you. Baby, you're really my baby. The joy in his eyes couldn't be hidden, and the overwhelming kiss fell again. After that day, Henry Jeremy stopped asking me to call him brother. But Henry Jeremy, I didn't want him to mistake me for Alger MacArthur anymore and change his tune. Our relationship is getting better and better, but his desire to control is also stronger. But because he wanted to go out for a walk, he taught me a long time in bed. Baby, you can tell me what you want. Can't I have someone send it to you? What is it out there that makes you yearn for it so much? I want to be free. I yelled at him, in a hoarse voice. Do you want freedom, or can't let go of Alger MacArthur? I slapped him without thinking about it, and told him to get out of the way with red eyes. We started a Cold War. To be precise, a unilateral Cold War between us. Henry Jeremy patiently coaxed me, but I didn't appreciate it, and vowed to fight him to the end. It wasn't until the 5th day that he offered to take me out. I couldn't believe my ears. You're really letting me out? Henry Jeremy looked a little helpless. What can I do? I am sad that the baby is not happy. In the car, I opened the window and looked at the lively scene outside, and I was in a trance. I have been in this world for 3 months, and this is the first time I have seen the outside world. With a heavy shoulder, Henry Jeremy's head rested. Is it that attractive from the outside? I didn't speak, and his earlobe was ground in his mouth. The pain and itch went straight to the tip of my heart, and I turned and shrank into his arms in amusement, and he let out a pleasant laugh. The palm of his hand stroked my hair like he was touching a kitten or a puppy. Half an hour later, I followed Henry Jeremy to my destination. It's a wedding scene. On the huge standing plaque is a sweet double photograph of Alger MacArthur and Alberta Bell. Baby, are you happy? Henry Jeremy meant something. I thought he had finally figured out to give me freedom. But he just took me out and continued to test me. For a while, his eyes were red with anger. He didn't believe I didn't like Alger MacArthur all along. It's so sad. His jaw hurt from his fingers. I slapped his hand away and let the tears fall. Yes, I'm so sad. Are you happy to say that? Henry Jeremy's face was ugly. Alger MacArthur's sneer rang out. this can't be pretended. Aren't you very good at pretending? Alger MacArthur. What are you proud of? Why are you so sure I still like you? His brow furrowed, as if he was remembering something. Remembering my original experience? I asked. What did I do to get you to put me in a mental hospital? I thought about everything the original owner had done in the book, except for humiliating Alberta Bell with money to get him to leave Alger MacArthur. It was to drug Alger MacArthur, and fail to climb into bed. Nothing else was done. The original owner has lived with him for 20 years. Even if there is no love, there should be some family affection, right? You drugged Alberta Bell and made it. Isn't it hurtful to insult her? Alger MacArthur looked at me, like he had quenched ice. I drugged her. There was no such plot in the original book at all. At this moment, the bride, Alberta Bell, arrived, and she gently took Alger MacArthur's arm, and urged the ceremony to begin. Alger MacArthur gave me a warning look, and left with Alberta Bell. As we passed by, Alberta Bell's eyes met mine, their eyes full of vigilance and gleam. It's not the gentle little white flower in the book at all. I'm almost certain that Alger MacArthur's dislike of the original owner was a part of it. The wedding ceremony begins, and the master of ceremonies walks through the process on the stage. I didn't want to stay, so I left Henry Jeremy behind. He grabbed his hand. Where are you going? Do you want to go to the bathroom too? I looked at him coldly. He let go and finally let me go. I didn't go to the bathroom. I just wanted to escape from the suffocating place. But when I found the side door of the hotel and was about to leave, someone covered my mouth and nose with a handkerchief. When I woke up, I was so weak that I couldn't even get up. A strange man with a fat head and big ears walked in. His yellow eyes swirled back and forth over me, and he tugged at his clothes impatiently. Get out of here. I struggled out of bed, limp, and fell to my knees. His hair was pulled by him, and a vicious voice came. Alger MacArthur said that I can't blame you for wanting to taste what it is like to be forced by others. Wanted to escape, but he grabbed his legs and dragged him back, and his clothes were torn. Don't, I screamed hoarsely, but it can't be stopped. Just as I was in despair, the door to my room was kicked open, and Henry Jeremy appeared. The man who was pulling my clothes was thrown to the ground before he could speak. Fists to the flesh, ruthless and abnormal. The man knelt down and begged for mercy. Alger MacArthur asked me to come. I didn't know she was your man. You can let me go. Henry Jeremy carried me to the bed and took off his suit, and put it over my head. The smell was familiar, as if returning to a safe haven. I held his hand tightly and wouldn't let him go. He stroked my back. Baby, I'll be right over when I take care of things. His hand was withdrawn, and I curled myself into a ball. The view was blocked, and I heard him laugh, and speak softly to the other person. I want to let you go, too, but I'm in a very, very bad mood today, so I'm sorry. Then I heard the sound of bones breaking, accompanied by screams. My heart was beating to my throat, and my whole brain was in chaos. I reached out and wanted to rip the blazer off my head. As soon as I raised my hand, I heard him say, "Baby, don't move." The voice was still gentle, but the tone was strong and commanding. My raised hand froze, and my body trembled uncontrollably. Perhaps the screams were too harsh, and Henry Jeremy snorted in dissatisfaction. Shhh. The screams died down immediately, only the whimper through the fabric. But that didn't take away my fear, and I couldn't stop shivering with the muffled sound of bones hitting the ground. Will he die? Will Henry Jeremy kill him? But murder is a crime, and I don't want Henry Jeremy to go to jail. I trembled and said, Henry Jeremy, stop fighting. I'm scared. Another sound of heads banging on the wall. Then footsteps approached me. The blazer on my head was removed and draped over me, and I met Henry Jeremy's clear eyebrows. His large frame obscured most of my vision. Instead, I saw the red-stained ground not far from the ground, and a few bloody teeth. Henry Jeremy discarded the towel he had finished wiping his hands, broke my face and kissed away the tears from the corners of my eyes, pecked me on the lips and whispered, "Baby, I'm still angry. What should I do?" My heart tightened suddenly, and I knew he was angry that I didn't listen to him, and ran around. He pinned me in the back of his head. "Baby, will you be locked up?" "Lock it up, and you'll be good." I shuddered. Henry Jeremy. I wanted to explain that I just left today because I was so angry. His lips were pressed against his thumb, baby, don't speak. After saying that, he picked me up and took me to a villa. He followed with a punitive kiss. In this slightly dated villa, he went out of his way to grab me by the waist and bump me. The scorching breath sprayed, and he kissed away my tears. Baby, what are you crying about? It's obvious that you're not well behaved. Why are you like I'm bullying you? Baby, you love me, don't you? You'll always be with me, won't you? When I didn't answer, he pressed harder, until he heard an answer that satisfied him. Henry Jeremy, I love you, and I will always be with you. When I woke up again, I had an extra ring on my ring finger. On top of that, I found myself locked up by Henry Jeremy again. Unlike a mental hospital, it's a novelty, at least for the time being. No one will always think of me as mentally ill. I sat on the windowsill and looked out at the decaying garden, when Henry Jeremy came up behind me and took me into his arms. Baby, why do you always want to go outside? Isn't it enough to see me? I leaned over him and asked him. Then why didn't you let me out? It's not like I'm not coming back. It was a long time before I heard him say, because I'm afraid. I looked up at him, puzzled. I have too few things, and they're all going to leave me. I won't leave you. I swore to look at him. Henry Jeremy smiled. Then the baby must remember his own words. Henry Jeremy seems to be busy lately, always leaving early and returning late. But he didn't forget to prepare a few meals for me, and he didn't forget to lock the door when he left. When I'm bored, I go around each room, flipping through a book or listening to the radio. Today I flipped to a photo album, and the yellow cover looked like it had been there for many years. Turning the first page, you will see a bright red cross painted on a little boy. The photo shows a family of 4, and the 2 children look exactly the same. The building behind it happens to be this villa. Scrolling back further, all of the photos show a boy crossed out with a red cross. The malice in it gave me goosebumps crawling uncontrollably all over my arms. At this moment, the door of the study was suddenly pushed open, and his mother, who had not been seen for a long time, appeared again. The album in his hand fell to the ground due to fright. Before I could pick it up, she had already picked it up before me, and stroked the red cross on the photo. Crazy, isn't it? At such a young age, he has a crazy desire for exclusivity, and he can't wait for his own brother to die. You mean Henry Jeremy? I asked her with a frown. She looked at me with pity in her eyes. It's pathetic. I don't know what kind of person I like. I know she doesn't have a good relationship with Henry Jeremy, and I think she's deliberately provoking and don't want to listen. Until she said, being locked up is just the beginning. I paused. Maybe you should check out his basement. Maybe there's an unexpected surprise. I was not a believer, but when I took the key his mother had given me, opened the door in the basement, and walked in, I saw a showroom. On the wall are my dense array of photographs, and on the shelves are containers of various sizes with their names attached. The container jar contained the same thing, a heart. I saw one of the smaller jars, which contain not human hearts, but animal ones. The name on the jar is Xiaobai. The words of Henry Jeremy echoed in my ears. Do you know what happened to it? I dug its heart out. I felt sick to my stomach, and almost threw up. As I stumbled to exit, I saw another empty container jar with my name written on it. I had a chill down my spine, my body almost unsteady, and fear had completely eaten away at all my sanity. I'm going to get out. That's the only thought on my mind. I pushed the door open, my eyes terrified. Henry Jeremy was outside the door. I found it. The smile on his face was still gentle. The relaxed tone seems to say that today is really a good weather. As he approached, I stepped back, my voice trembling. Henry Jeremy, I don't see anything. Then why is the baby avoiding me? Are you afraid of me? When I was cornered, I finally broke down. Don't come near me, madman. He restrained my hands and pressed them against the wall. Crazy, baby, you make me sad. I was like a lamb to the slaughter, bound hand and foot by him to the operating table in the showroom. His cool fingertips slid down from the center of my eyebrows, through the tip of my nose to my lips, to my jaw, and finally to a place somewhere in my chest. Baby, say you love me. I shook my head helplessly, and my gagged mouth couldn't make a sound. His fingers continued to slide, sickly and gently. Don't you love it? But the baby is here and here saying they love me. I looked at myself in the mirror and cried, my body marked by Henry Jeremy, until he was contaminated with his breath inside and out. After that day, I was locked in the basement. Henry Jeremy held a calendar and gave me a date of death. Baby, will you be okay in 3 days? The almanac says that this day is a good day. I don't want it. Henry Jeremy, will you let me go? I cried and prayed. Baby, you said you would never leave me, but you lied to me first. As punishment, I keep your heart. Right. I threw myself in the face uncontrollably. You're crazy, crazy. He took my hand and kissed it. Not angry at all. Baby, I love you. I don't want to do this to you, but you had to rely on me, in the first place. Time to reach the 3rd day. Henry Jeremy arrives with a bright red apple and a sharp knife. I knew he would use that knife to slit open my chest and take out my heart. At this time, he was using this knife to cut apples. The skin of the apple fell, revealing the white flesh, and he cut a small piece and fed it to my mouth with a knife. It's like a talisman to me, and I don't want to just wave it away. He withdrew quickly, and my finger was still cut by the blade. Why are you so careless? I will feel sorry for you like this. Henry Jeremy set the knife aside, grabbed my injured finger, and held it in his mouth. While he wasn't looking, I trembled and grabbed the knife. Withdrawing my hand, I pointed the knife at him. Don't come here. I went backwards and tried to get out of the basement. Henry Jeremy licked the blood off his lips, and smiled even more in his eyes. Does the baby want to play the escape game? Then play. Who told me to love you? In 2 minutes, as long as the baby runs out of the door. I don't want the baby's heart. I stared straight at him, not sure what he was saying. 1, 2, as the counts sounded, I didn't have the energy to think about anything other than to run. Behind him, Henry Jeremy's voice followed him, and the fear in his heart was infinitely amplified. I ran out of the basement and ran to the door, which opened. Baby, you're too slow. The shoulder was grabbed by Henry Jeremy. I clenched the knife in my hand, and turned around and stabbed Henry Jeremy in the chest. Henry Jeremy looked down at his blood-stained clothes and smiled red. Baby, you win. Go find your freedom. Don't look back. I was pushed out by him. When the door closed, I burst into tears. My heart pounded, and my heart was in turmoil. I'm free, but I'm not as happy as I thought. Sharon MacArthur, what are you doing standing stupidly? Why don't you come over quickly? Seeing that I was not moving, Alger MacArthur came from a distance and pulled me into the car parked outside the villa, pulling me into the limp of my body. Where are you taking me? Home, of course. Go home. What happened to me today is simply more terrifying than the last. I misunderstood you before, and you'll be my sister to Alger MacArthur. Shortly after the car drove out, a huge explosion sounded in the villa. A great sense of uneasiness came over me, as if I had overlooked something. I grabbed Alger MacArthur and asked, how do you know I'm here? Just at this time, didn't you ask Henry Jeremy to help you find out the truth, and let me pick you up? I see. Take me back. I'm going back. I finally knew what I had overlooked. Everything went so smoothly that Henry Jeremy never wanted to dig out my heart. I remembered what he said about being afraid. He said he had too little and would always lose, and his sleepless nights, and his indifference when he was treated maliciously by his mother. Maybe he didn't want to live at all. When I returned to the villa, the whole villa was already on fire, and his mother was looking at the fire and laughing maniacally. Finally, Henry Jeremy, Henry Jeremy. I shouted at the villa where the fire was spreading, trying to rush in. He was stopped by Alger MacArthur. You're crazy, aren't you? Get out of here. Alger MacArthur's eyes flashed with disbelief. Don't you even want your life for another man? That Sharon MacArthur, who liked you, is long dead. I'm not her. Breaking free of Alger MacArthur's grasp, I rushed into the villa in desperation. On a private island somewhere in Europe, I kicked Henry Jeremy out of bed. Can you think of something normal in your head, every day? The foot was held by him, and the fine kiss fell on the instep. Why is it not normal to love your wife? Get out of here. I grabbed the pillow and knocked him out of the room. After closing the door, I rubbed my waist, looking down at the bite marks on his toes. He couldn't help but secretly swear a dirty word. It's been over a year since I've been here. Henry Jeremy and I didn't die. He had already left a way out. Of course, this retreat is only for me. and I didn't leave him behind. If I had gone with Alger MacArthur, he would have died in the villa. In his words, without me, he would have no meaning in life. He actually gave me two options. If I left him and chose to be free, the truth he had helped me find out in advance, and Alberta Bell's self-directed behavior, would have been enough to make Alger MacArthur feel guilty about me. I can go back to the MacArthur house, and continue to be my MacArthur lady. If I choose him, it means that I automatically enter the cage he has set for me. I never had a chance to leave him again. Actually, I love the feeling of being madly loved by Henry Jeremy. Even if this love is frightening and suffocating, as long as it doesn't threaten my life, I'm willing to accept it. Perhaps only such feelings can move me. Henry Jeremy's perspective. Ever since I was a child, I was not liked by my mother. She firmly believes that I am the bad seed. One of them was that, when she was pregnant and gave birth, my umbilical cord wrapped around my brother's neck. Even if there was a thrilling and successful birth in the end, she loved my brother even more. When I raised us, I was fed by a nanny, and my brother was fed by herself, so much so that I wasn't that close to her. And as our two brothers grew up, their personalities were even more different. The eldest brother loves to smile and sweet-mouth, and always likes to be tired of his mother making me indifferent and alienated. This made her dislike me even more. The second is that, when he was 5 years old, he was in a car accident, and his eldest brother and father died. I was the only one who survived. Maybe it's too painful, so you always have to find some reason to hate me. She asked someone to tell her fortune, and came to the same conclusion as she had expected. I said that I killed my eldest brother and father, but he completely forgot that the root cause of the car accident was his father's drunk driving. Since then, my life has been completely darkened. The rabbit I liked was cut open, and thrown on my bed by her bloody, and pretended to be made by me, and let my relatives see me holding a knife in my hand stained with blood, making me a monster in their eyes. That basement was the punishment room she made just for me. As long as I don't play Big Brother submissively, she'll lock me up, let me look at their hearts to repent and forgive. When I got to school, she would deliberately isolate me from my classmates, who were trying to make friends with me, tell me some terrible truths she made up, and set up a mentally abnormal character for me. She tried to erase my personality, and force me to live as my big brother. Nobody loves me and no one cares about me. Later, I became addicted to it, because she would only be gentle with me when she pretended to be a big brother. Even though I knew it was candy with arsenic, I ate it like I could, because I want to be loved so much. Until Sharon MacArthur came along, sticking to me like a piece of Kraft candy, and calling me brother, obediently and pitifully holding me, like a little rabbit I once raised. Even knowing that she approached me with a purpose still made me greedy. My mother had already planned how I could lose her when she found her. Not giving her freedom is not only because of my desire to control, but also for her safety. I was scared of losing her, like I lost my rabbit when I was a kid. But she is always unobedient and wants to be free. So when my mother deliberately misled her that I was a psychopathic murderer, I didn't explain. Most of those containers were fake hearts. It was a big gamble. If I lose the bet, I die, and return her freedom and safety. The bet was won, and I took her away, giving her the freedom I could see. It wasn't until I waited for death in the fire that I saw her rush in desperately that I burst into tears like a new life. She was my salvation, pulling me out of my nightmare, and making me forgive all the hardships I had suffered in the past. The end.